Hello, and welcome back to Medieval History. Today, we're witnessing a single year, 1066, that irrevocably changed the course of England, Europe, and the English language itself. We are diving into the story of the Norman invasion, a stunning military feat that cemented the power of William the Conqueror and brought the Anglo-Saxon age to a decisive, bloody end. To understand the invasion, we must first understand the crisis that invited it. The year is 1066, and the Old English king, Edward the Confessor, has died childless. This immediately threw the kingdom into chaos, as there was no clear heir. The throne was up for grabs, and three powerful men claimed it. First, there was Harold Godwinson, the most powerful nobleman in England. He was the Earl of Wessex, and the Anglo-Saxon Witenagemot, a council of leading men, elected him king immediately after Edward's death. He had the backing of the English political machine. Second, there was Harald Hardrada, the fearsome king of Norway. He claimed the English throne based on a complicated agreement made between previous Norse and Danish kings. He was a colossal figure, a veteran warrior, and arguably the last great Viking. He arrived ready to seize the throne by force. And third, there was William, Duke of Normandy. William claimed that King Edward had promised him the throne years earlier, and he used this as justification for what he really wanted: power and conquest. He saw Harold's coronation as an act of treachery. Harold Godwinson, now King Harold II, knew he had to defend his title. But which enemy would strike first? He positioned his strong, well-trained army in the south, expecting William to cross the English Channel at any moment. But the first blow came from the north. In September 1066, Harald Hardrada and a large Norwegian army landed in Northumbria. Harold Godwinson was forced into an agonizing decision: march his entire army 200 miles north in less than a week, or lose half his kingdom. He chose to march. The speed of Harold's response was legendary. He caught the Vikings completely by surprise at the Battle of Stamford Bridge on September 25, 1066. The English forces achieved a stunning, overwhelming victory. Hardrada was killed, and the Viking threat was eliminated. It was one of the greatest military feats of the Anglo-Saxon era. Harold had won a kingdom-saving victory, but he didn't even have time to celebrate. 2 days after the battle at Stamford Bridge, with Harold and his exhausted army still celebrating and recovering hundreds of miles away, the wind finally changed in the south. William of Normandy launched his invasion. He landed his massive fleet of 700 ships and 7,000 men at Pevensey Bay in Sussex, entirely unopposed. William immediately began building fortifications and sacking the surrounding area. This was a direct provocation. He was forcing Harold to abandon the north and rush south to meet him, or risk letting William establish a permanent foothold. Harold, though victorious, was now in a desperate position. He had to march his army all the way back south, another 250 miles, leaving behind many of his best northern troops who were guarding the newly defeated Vikings or were simply too exhausted to continue. By the time he reached London, his core forces, the Huscarls, his professional household troops, were spent. Against the advice of his nobles, Harold immediately marched out to meet William, perhaps overconfident from his victory at Stamford Bridge, or simply desperate to expel the invader before he could gain more strength. The two forces met on October 14, 1066, on a ridge near the town of Hastings. Harold positioned his men atop the ridge in a fearsome shield wall, a tightly packed defensive formation that had served the Saxons well for centuries. The Normans, in contrast, employed a mixed force strategy: archers, heavy infantry, and most crucially, the armoured Norman cavalry. For hours, the Norman attacks crashed against the unyielding English shield wall. The Norman infantry and archers could not break the formation. William's army suffered heavy losses, and at one point, rumours spread that William himself had been killed. He had to ride his horse along the line, lifting his helmet to show his face and rally his troops. It was William's tactical ingenuity that finally broke the stalemate. He ordered his infantry to execute a series of feigned retreats. The Anglo-Saxons, confident in their defense but undisciplined in pursuit, repeatedly broke their shield wall to chase the retreating Normans down the hill. Each time the Saxons chased, the waiting Norman cavalry would turn back and slam into the now exposed English flanks. The discipline of the English army began to crumble. The battle reached its tragic climax late in the afternoon. Harold Godwinson, fighting at the heart of the shield wall, was struck down. According to the famous Bayeux tapestry, he was struck by an arrow in the eye, though the exact manner of his death is still debated. With their king dead, the remaining English forces dissolved. The Normans had won a brutal, decisive victory. The psychological impact of this single battle cannot be overstated. The Saxon belief in the invincibility of their shield wall was utterly shattered. The loss of King Harold and the subsequent loss of the entire Anglo-Saxon elite decapitated the existing government and military structure. England was not just defeated, it was rendered leaderless and vulnerable to total control. Following his coronation on Christmas Day, William spent the next few years securing his realm through a systematic campaign of fear and reorganization known as the Harrying of the North. He ordered the devastation of large parts of northern England, burning crops, slaughtering livestock, and ensuring that no rebellion could ever find support there. This brutal act highlights the ruthlessness of William's control and his determination to eradicate all centers of Saxon resistance. The goal was not mere victory, but absolute, unchallenged domination. The political and social transformation was just as complete. William replaced almost the entire Anglo-Saxon aristocracy with Norman nobles, knights, and bishops. He introduced the feudal system to England, transforming the concept of land ownership from a traditional Anglo-Saxon right to a hierarchical system of fealty owed directly to the king. To ensure he understood exactly what he owned and could tax, William commissioned the famous Domesday Book in 1085, an exhaustive survey of every piece of land and property in England. This document remains one of the most important pieces of historical evidence in existence, demonstrating the sheer administrative ambition of the new Norman state. The Norman conquest fundamentally shifted England's alignment. It pulled the island away from its Nordic and Germanic ties and firmly anchored it to the politics and culture of continental Europe, especially France. The entire structure of English society, its laws, land ownership, architecture, and even its DNA, was transformed in the crucible of 1066. The Norman invasion stands as one of the most successful and consequential invasions in history. It took one battle, one king, and one defining moment to change England forever. What part of the Norman conquest do you find most fascinating? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to explore more of these world-changing moments, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Medieval History for weekly videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.